I got to have the world in my hands. I'm a god. I'm no longer a black man. The black god.
Marquise Roll, aka SpaceGhostPurrp, born April 1st, 1991. When you speak about having influence and the ability to inspire, it's something as a person in general you have to be very careful with, because those shouldn't come cheap. The thing is, they often go uncredited and no one remembers what or who was the vehicle of inspiration that made their favorite song or even favorite artist. Today's feature may be the biggest living example of that and what it looks like in the end when the students became the teacher and no one remembers the lessons they got or who it came from. SpaceGhostPurrp in the early 2010s was like a breath of fresh air for fans with his music, mainly because there was a sense of real to it and rawness, like it was coming straight from the source. In the smoked out, get high and turn up era of the early 2010s, SpaceGhostPurrp's music was the perfect vibe. It was dark, nostalgic, with his 3-6 Mafia 90s influence, but most of all, it connected perfectly to the times with his eerie, lo-fi beats and rapping about getting as high as you wanted, as this was the in thing to do, believe it or not. And it wasn't mainstream like Wiz Khalifa or Mac Miller, it was underground, and that was the biggest draw for SpaceGhostPurrp, but also one of the biggest reasons he never became what many thought he should be today. He never quite figured out how to transition from just being underground to mainstream success. It's also a good example that no matter how talented you are, no matter how great your influence is or how well you inspire, some just don't have that thing that makes them marketable on a mass-produced level. To know the clout SpaceGhostPurrp had back in 2011, 2012, and look back on his career realizing he's only ever released one studio album that consisted mainly of songs the public had already heard before on his mixtapes is almost sad to see, because so many fans wanted his music to grow to heights they could publicly champion and grow with, and because he deserved it, with all the artists that came before or after him and ate off his plate in one way or another. Looking back, it almost makes perfect sense it became that way, seeing as Purrp always seemed to move to a different beat than your normal artist and strive to be different his entire career. The EP mixtape Young Lord. He was the hottest thing in rap for a quick second, but then everyone ran off with something of his and left him behind. The Curious Case of SpaceGhostPurrp's underwhelming career. What happened? Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC Stunner Growth of Music. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. SpaceGhostPurrp is a rapper, producer, and songwriter from Miami, Florida, of Bahamian and Cuban descent. Since an early age, Purrp knew he wanted to be a rapper and began pursuing it intently. His timing was perfect, as the late 2000s, early 2010s was to be one of hip-hop's golden eras, where the sound was about to change and a new generation of rappers were about to make a name for themselves as the next urban icons. Purrp and his collective Raider Clan formed around the time the young, talented, misfit hip-hop collective was becoming popular for that era's youth as far as rap music. A new vibe was being set, and SpaceGhostPurrp was a huge part of it. He began working with everyone from Wiz Khalifa, Juicy J, ASAP Mob, Crazy Bone, Freddie Gibbs, you name them, and Purrp had something to do with providing the canvas for their creativity in some way. His influence became that vast, but then, stunt number 1, giving the keys away. The biggest hindrance to SpaceGhostPurrp's growth early on was him loaning his sound to so many artists that when they ran off with it, there was nothing he could do about it. Many like to mention A$AP Rocky as one of the biggest culprits of running with Purrp's style, and I can somewhat agree with him being influenced and even inspired, but it's difficult to call that completely true when A$AP Rocky went on to have major success with the style and made it his own, to the point mainstream A$AP Rocky fans probably don't know who SpaceGhostPurrp is or can name more than 3 songs from him. It's the same with Lil Wayne and Gilly the Kid, Nicki Minaj, Safari. It's better to say they were likely inspired or influenced by something they heard that unlocked something inside them as artists, where they were able to sustain lengthy careers long after meeting the person that initially gave the influence. If Wayne became much more successful after Gilly, and Gilly didn't do the same with his own style, I can't say Wayne took anything from him outside inspiration. Rocky and SpaceGhostPurrp worked together early on after pioneer ASAP Yams found Purrp online and brought him to New York to work with his artist ASAP Mob. Purrp produced a few songs for Rocky like Pretty Flacco and Keep It G that Rocky himself admitted was the beginning of his Pretty Flacco moniker that laid the blueprint for Rocky to step right into SpaceGhostPurrp's gloomy, sorta devilish, transient sound and make it his own. It helped. Rocky was always a better rapper than Purrp in my opinion and had more star charisma as well, where Purrp drastically lacked in that area. He was a cool dude, but he wasn't as marketable as Rocky was. ASAP Rocky was from New York City, the popular Harlem to be exact, not from Miami with a New York or Texas sound like Purrp. Rocky was from the heart of where it went down and able to get a light on him Purrp couldn't. He moved on to work with Wiz Khalifa, Juicy J, Odd Future, and many more that all took parts of his sound and simply made it their own. He was great at providing the canvas, the brushes, and the paint for an artist, and from there, they could run off all the way to millions. Stunt number 2, Burned Bridges.
But once I think that was around the time when like the Purrp niggas started talking crazy. He went back home and just switched up for no reason.
I was like, yo, bro, you good? He was like, yo, twit, yo, Purrp, no, yo. You know, I came in and I was just like, you gay, man. You gay.
One thing fans liked about Purrp was that he held no punches on what he wanted to say, even to a fault. The ASAP Mob Raider Clan hookup could have been very profitable for Purrp if done the right way. Or, if you ask Purrp himself, if certain people weren't who they are, which caused him to become distant and even angry. SpaceGhostPurrp went on rants on Facebook and Instagram Live where he detailed what made him draw away from ASAP Rocky. In his words, Rocky was exuding behavior he just didn't agree with that involved other men, and upon his discovery, he had to distance himself from ASAP Mob entirely. Do I believe this is true? Well, that's not for me to decide. What I do think though is whatever went on between them should have stayed offline and handled face to face. Purrp claims he's seen or overheard Rocky doing homosexual things when either caught off guard at the studio or at penthouse mansion parties, and my thing is, why not confront him then and there instead of online, where, let's be honest, you do yourself harm as well in an industry that's long been accused of such things, with the power to blackball anyone that mentions it. Was SpaceGhostPurrp blackballed? Well, yes, obviously, but I think he brought it on himself. Add to that, he'd have rants denouncing every artist dead or alive like Tupac, Pop Smoke, Snoop, and more, and that energy will never make it mainstream. Not that he cares, but his own actions, I think, burned a lot of bridges that once could have led to more musical success, instead made him more hated in the industry than championed.
Y'all niggas is gay. Y'all homosexuals on the low. Y'all niggas is bro. I'm about to expose every last one of you niggas, bro. Bro, gay people too, nigga. Everybody, nigga.
Stunt number 3, Strange Release Strategy. I'm not sure if it's genius or just plain ignorant, but one thing that stood out to me was SpaceGhostPurrp always had an EP or new mixtape about to drop, and never a new album or a body of work with new songs he gave full effort into. It's like he never wanted to be mainstream in the first place. Most of the songs released at the time on the EPs and mixtapes were already released to the public in some fashion, just remixed or remastered and released again. His entire debut album was full of songs he just did over and called it an album. Maybe at the time he needed better management, seeing as he was never signed to a major label that could have helped him come off as a bigger artist simply by getting him to release new, quality music and at least a few for mainstream. But again, not everyone wants to be mainstream, and I think Purrp was one of those artists. Obviously, the songs he did release didn't do much to gain new fans, as he just stayed stagnant while artists around him, mainly his peers, all grew their platform and took off without him. Once that window of him being new and fresh closed by the mid-2010s, he became old news, and at the point I don't think anything but a hit song could save him. We could blame A$AP Rocky and other artists for stealing his swag and running off with it, but in the end, it's the music that matters, and SpaceGhostPurrp's was confusing how it was released over the years. Sustainable for an underground career, but had no chance breaking mainstream. All in all, I think SpaceGhostPurrp is a legend even if it's underground. 2010s hip-hop, I think, understands his influence and canvas he gave to artists around that time, and sometimes an artist can live with that. He had a unique sound to start, then curiously loaned it away for artists to run off with it and leave him behind. Influential artist, but for these reasons, his growth was stunted. Salute, much respect. It's your boy JC Stunner Growth Music, and I'm out.